Before we get going, I want to ask you all a question. So I want you to put your hand up if you think the world is getting better. Just put your hand up if you think the world's getting better. And then have a look around, keep your hand up and just have a look around just to see a gauge as to who's sort of voting for that one. Okay, put your hands down. I want you to put your hand up now if you think the world is getting worse. Couple, 2, 3, a few people. What tends to happen, and this is interesting because it's obviously different communities respond in different ways to that question, but what I tend to find mostly is that I get 50% of the audience put their hand up for getting better and 50% put their hand up for getting worse. And that's actually because that's the case. We're seeing incredible progress in the world, not just in technological advancements, access to education, access to health and wellness, access to technology and all sorts of things. But what we're also finding is that the incredible growth in conscious awareness. And the mere fact alone that we're having this convention around awakening is testimony to that we're seeing incredible levels of growth in the amount of consciousness on the planet. But at the same time, simultaneously, we're also seeing incredible levels of decay on the planet as well, which is environmental destruction at the rate we've never seen before. We're seeing extreme levels of mental health deterioration and, the need for medication in our communities down to very, very young ages. So we're seeing deterioration and we're also seeing growth as well. What that signifies is that we're moving into what's called a phase shift, where we're going to see one or the other prevail. And it's a really interesting time where we're seeing incredible levels of growth and incredible levels of decay happening simultaneously. It means that we're getting closer and closer to a particular junction point where one of these two will prevail. And I liken it to the caterpillar morphing into the butterfly. So what happens in the caterpillar is it's a net consumer and it gorges and it gorges and it gorges. And what it's doing is it's just eating itself into oblivion. It basically consumes for its own personal natural gain. It has no concern or consideration for other, and it's simply a net consumer. And left to its own devices, it will consume itself into oblivion by eating the forest because it eats quicker than the forest can repropagate. But what's happening in that caterpillar is really interesting, is it's gathering these amino acids and proteins inside of itself. And this gathering of these amino acids is actually starting to develop what's called these imaginal cells in the caterpillar. Now, the imaginal cells are the future version of itself that is starting to develop within the caterpillar. These imaginal cells are the future version of it becoming the butterfly, but it's not quite the butterfly yet. Now, what happens with these imaginal cells is that the immune system sees these imaginal cells as a threat to the current status quo. The status quo says, hey, hang on a sec, we're a caterpillar here and you're representing something completely different. And what happens is the resistant immune system in the caterpillar starts to annihilate or eradicate these imaginal cells. This is what's been happening on our planet for many thousands of years. Anyone that comes along that represents a new status quo to humanity, a new way of doing things, has been crucified, assassinated, incarcerated for thousands of years. It's like, guys, I'm sorry, but this is how we do things, and you are challenging the current status quo. And we don't like that. Now, what happens so interestingly in the caterpillar is these imaginal cells, they start to collaborate, communicate, congregate, proliferate to the point where they eventually overwhelm the resistant immune system. And now the caterpillar is going through a tipping point where there's past the point of return. What is happening now is that caterpillar is going through the chrysalis, and it is going to go through to becoming the butterfly, where it will go ahead and now start to propagate and help the flourishment of the forest. Now, as a species, we're not past the tipping point. We're not past the chrysalis moment. We still have an immensely resistant immune system that is trying to limit or eliminate the new status quo for humanity. But what we're seeing is conventions like this, 100 million people on the car map. We're seeing this huge growth in consciousness. And what is the unfamiliar is going to become the familiar at some point soon. And we're going to look at what this looks like today. But we do need to make it happen quickly. And the way I liken this is that because in the caterpillar, it won't always cross that threshold into the chrysalis. Sometimes that resistant immune system is just too strong, and it will complete its existence as the caterpillar. And it doesn't quite get to see that future version of itself play out. And the way I see this is that it's like where we're at now for humanity. It's 22 all. There's 3 minutes to go. And no one's leaving the bleachers because we don't know which way this is going to go. And it's going to be an absolute nail-biter. But we do need to address this. And so we're going to look at this today. What we're going to look at is altitudes of development and spiral dynamics and where we're at in the spiral. It's going to be really interesting for you to understand where you're at in the spiral and where humanity's at the spiral and where we're going to. We're going to look at the Vedas, a vast body of knowledge, and how and why a global shift is imminent. We're also going to look at why we need to switch from game A, the game we're currently playing as a species, which is a very unsustainable and finite game, and why we need to shift into game B. And then we're going to ask a question, is an enlightened planet possible? And how on earth are we going to get there? And we're going to have some really interesting solutions to that. We'll have a Q&A at the end as well, so if you've got some questions, by all means, bring them to the session. So we need to address this now. Like I said, it's 22 all, 3 minutes to go. We're coming down to the wire. Lionheart founder David Langer is a friend of mine who he had a very successful play with a large tech that he created in Silicon Valley, made $350 million out of that, and then set up a $1 billion fund called Lionheart. And Lionheart invests in existential risk to humanity. So they're putting their money where their mouth is. And I had some really good conversations with them. And they've done a lot of science. And he says it is very imminent that if we don't make changes very soon, we will see the termination of the species. The doomsday clock, only just a few months ago, I don't know if anyone saw it, but they announced that we're now 90 seconds to midnight. Midnight is considered the end of the human species. We were 5 minutes to midnight about 10, 15 years ago, then it got to 2 minutes, then only recently it got to 90 seconds to midnight. David Attenborough says the collapse of civilization in the natural world is on the horizon. So it's not like we can kind of sit around, twiddle our thumbs and just hope things work out. We actually do need to make some serious fundamental changes. Otherwise, this little caterpillar of the human species will end up eating ourselves into oblivion and wiping ourselves out as caterpillars before we get to see ourselves turn into these beautiful, luscious butterflies. A little bit about me. Before I was a broker in finance. I worked there on a trading room floor. This is my company. This is a trading room floor on my company. We had about 20 of these types of desks on a massive open room trading room floor. If anyone's seen Wolf of Wall Street, it kind of gave me goosebumps when I saw that because it was so accurately portrayed what a trading room floor was like in the 80s and 90s, and that's when I started my career. I was trading swaps and bonds on global investment with some of the biggest banks in the world, Union Bank of Switzerland, Deutsche Bank, Goldman's, JP Morgan, and Citibank. These days, I'm a meditation teacher, speaker, author, performance coach, retreat host, and also the film producer producing The Portal. So we're going to dive into spiral dynamics and altitudes of development. And what this is it's a infusion of the work of Ken Wilber, which is spiral dynamics, and the infusion of Dustin DePerma's work, altitudes development. I've created my own sort of theme and thesis on it. So we're going to look at this spiral from the bottom up, and we're going to look at it through the ages of us from naught as we grow older. Now, when a child is born, the ages of 0 till 2, any mothers or fathers out there will know that that child doesn't have any awareness about its own existence for the first 2 years. It really just wants to eat, sleep, and shit and pee, so it doesn't really have a lot going on. And it's a very simple, very basic existence. Then what happens at the ages of 2, and we call it the terrible twos because that child suddenly has a sense that it exists and it has needs and wants. And so from 2 till 4, it becomes extremely egocentric extremely narcissistic, and it doesn't have the capacity to consider other at that point in time. As a mother or father, you'll probably know that your kids never, at the age of 3, came down and said, "Hey, Mum, you look a bit tired. Was there anything wrong? Why were you up last night?" They just don't have that capacity to consider or concern themselves with other people. The thing with spiral dynamics and altitudes development is that what we've recognized is that people can get stuck in the spiral, or someone can have an extreme experience that can spiral them down. And you've heard the terminology, they're spiraling out of control. Would you think they're spiraling upwards or downwards? They're spiraling downwards. And that's anti-evolutionary, which means it's going to be chaotic and turbulent and unpleasant. Some of you might know some people in your lives that are still stuck in the red zone. Maybe ex-lovers, maybe someone in your family, an ex-partner, and there's a lot of people still very much stuck in the red zone, extremely concerned only about their own personal needs and gains. Extreme narcissism, sociopaths are usually those types of people, egocentrics. Now, what happens when we get to 5 till 12 is a really interesting time. So we've gone from a very me-centric stage in the red zone, and now we go into the yellow zone, which is very we-centric, which means they are so concerned about other people's attention that they're absolutely petrified of it. That's why when they have to do show and tell in the classroom on Monday morning after the weekend, they're so nervous and afraid of being judged by other kids that they just are so scared of being seen. And so now we become extremely concerned about other people's attention, that we become very conformist. And this is something from the ages usually 5 till 12, and that's why school teachers, we've got one in the room, they really enjoy working with kids that age because they're much easier to work with, because they're kind of like just do what they're told. You know, they eat their peas, they, brush their teeth, they put on their pajamas and they do their homework. And generally most kids 5 till 12 behave pretty well. And that's because they're in a we zone and they're very conformist. Now, a lot of culture and civilizations or nations have very conformist societies, and Australia is actually one of them. We are a society that doesn't like to stand out. We don't like to be seen. We don't like to be judged, and we actually like to be told what to do. That's why there's street signs and signs everywhere telling us what we should and shouldn't do, and we kind of don't know how to live our lives unless we're told what to do. And so the yellow zone is actually how a lot of leaders like their people to be, and it's much easier to control a large group of people by a small group of people by keeping them in the yellow zone. And as a species, we've been in the yellow zone for quite a long time, for hundreds of years, aristocrats controlling large groups of people with armies and military and keeping them very conformist. And we've even got countries in the world today that are still keeping their people in the yellow zone by street cameras and batons and tear gas and all sorts of things to try and keep them conformist and sitting within a very tight parameter. Now, what happens when we get to sort of 13 to 19, things kind of go a bit wild. This is when we get into well, screw you, screw conformity, screw the teachers. I want to do what I want to do, and this is my life. I'm going to do it my way. So we leave the we zone, enter into the me zone. And so now all of a sudden it's well, fuck you all. I'm going to do what I want to do. And this is where we break out of the mold. And we just can't fit in those tight containers that everyone's trying to keep us in. And this is something that as a species we moved into only in the sort of 1980s. Up until then, for hundreds of years, we were very much in the yellow zone. But we had Gordon Gekko, Lunches for Wimps. We had Sherman McCoy, Bonfire of the Vanities. In the 80s and 90s was the start very much of an explosion of us as a species into me and my success and doing great things and achieving great things and being an entrepreneur and individual pursuits and breaking out of the mold of putting bottle tops on bottles in factories. So this explosion in the 80s, 90s and 2000s, Gary Vee, Anthony Robbins, Brendan Burchard, come on guys, you can do amazing things. This is your life, do what you want. And it was all about individual pursuits and putting yourself first and putting your own personal needs at the center of your attention. Now, what happens with the orange zone is that we've got people really exploiting everything they can possibly exploit for their own personal gain. And what happens is that forces a whole new level of evolution in the society, because then all of a sudden we get people in the green zone saying, hey, you guys there in the orange zone are screwing it up for everyone. You're burning down the trees in the forests, which is killing us all. You're killing all the whales in the ocean. You're killing all the bees. You can't keep doing what you're doing because it's not good for all of us. So that forces the me zone, a whole new group of people in the we zone, in the green. And these people are the people that are kind of trying to keep the orange people in check. Stay with me on this because this is going to make sense to you in a moment because we're going to work out where you're at in the altitudes of development. So we've got a lot of the world now suddenly emerged in the last 10 years into the green zone. The very first time we saw it, we had a little bit in the 60s and 70s with the Vietnam War and the civil rights movement. But just in the last 10 years, we've got Black Lives Matter, we've got anti-vax, we've got veganism, we've got environmentalism, we've got the Me Too. You're seeing LGBTQ, the whole movement of people starting to say, hey, I'm not sure this is the right way to live our world. And we have naturally been forced into being a little bit more finger-pointing and sort of suggesting we could do things a little bit better. Greta Thunberg, classic green zone. The thing with the green zone, though, is still very polarized. My way is better than your way. My way is right, your way is wrong. And so we have this conflict. And a lot of people are like, oh, the world's so conflicted. You can't do a post without someone complaining or criticizing. This is actually, when you understand altitudes of development and spiral dynamics, it's an incredibly important stage in our evolution as a species. It's going to be uncomfortable when we have a lot of people in orange and a lot of people in green. And that's what's causing the conflict. It's not a bad thing. It's just where we're at in our evolution as a species. We don't want everyone in red, we don't want everyone in yellow, and we don't want everyone in orange. But we do need some green people. And that's going to help us evolve as a species. But what's going to happen as well after that is you're going to get a group of people that are going to sprout up to the next level because, I don't want all this conflict stuff. I don't want to be polarized. And we naturally see this progression into the teal zone. Teal is where you wake up and you realize that the world is not just form and phenomenon. It's not duality and it's not separation and segregation. There's something beyond this physical world of ours. And this is something where you start to connect with a subtle, ethereal, divine quality of reality. This is where we understand divinity, transpersonal, spirituality, and you wake up. And although sometimes you might think, I actually want to go back to sleep, once you wake up, you can't go back to sleep. It's too late. You're past the threshold. And now you're into teal. Teal is a beautiful space because now you start to realize that there's something more than this duality of conflict and greed and all that other stuff that's going on in the world. There's something subtler than that. And this is where we start to wake up to this fundamental truth, which is why a lot of people are here at a conference like this today. And I'd suggest that nearly everyone in this room at this talk most likely have had some type of teal type experience. And it's time for us to start understanding where we're at in the spiral and what role we have to play. Because some people can stay in teal, nothing wrong with that. You can get to teal and just keep living your life. I've got a friend of mine who's one of the most conscious human beings I've ever met. She's a barrister in the courts. And for her, it's just being in teal while she's still in orange. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with that. Some people want to go in teal and then they want to go and live in a monastery. Nothing wrong with that as well. But some people get to teal and they go, I'm going all in, I'm going to coral. Now, coral is the highest level when it comes to the human evolution. Coral is when you're awake and you're stepping into leadership, plus a position of authority, where you inspire, where you help humanity move along that threshold and up the spiral. We don't currently have any of our world's leaders, that's the banking sector, the political sector, the big pharma, the medical industry, the education system. We don't have anyone currently in coral, except possibly the King of Bhutan. Pretty much all of our leaders are in orange still, so we've got a ways to go. But we do have a lot of leaders in coral. Your Deepak Chopra's, your Neil Donald Walsh's, your Mary Williamson's, and many of you people in this room today are in coral. What's important is You've got to own coral if you're in coral, or if you want to get to coral, step into it. I wake up every morning and go, I'm in coral, I've got to live and breathe coral, I've got to own coral, and I've got to really embrace the embodiment of someone that's playing at that capacity to be coral. And so if you're getting that inspiration, that nudge, then really step into that and look at ways that you can really live and breathe that and play a role in the world and get us across that threshold into the butterfly status. Because we're going to need a lot of leaders to guide humanity up this spiral from yellow, red, orange, green, teal. So we've got a ways to go yet, and we've got some work to do. And people like yourselves, if you're feeling called, come and talk to me, because big part of my role now is to help people get into coral and operate from coral and build a business out of being in coral, because that's something that we need to do these days. Now, I'm a big student of the Vedas, which is an ancient body of knowledge that spans around 5,000 to 6,000 years. It's a beautiful body of knowledge. We call it the science of life. And in the Vedas, they recognize that there are these epochs of time, these long windows of time, and these are called yugas. And the yuga that we're in at the moment is currently called Kali Yuga. And you can go to Wikipedia, Google, or ChatGPT and type in explain Kali Yuga, and you'll get it's the age of ignorance, it's the age of darkness, the age of greed, vice, misery, sickness, quarrel. When we say quarrel, we mean conflict. Anyone seeing conflict in our world at the moment? One country throwing bombs across the border of another country, and then the other country throwing bombs across the border, and I don't like what you did, and I didn't like what you did. And this is something that is naturally happening for thousands and thousands of years, 10,000 years, the Kali Yuga. Some say 15 to 20,000 years. That's how long we've been in this era of separation, segregation, me, mine, yours, us, them, and this duality. But the beautiful thing about the Kali Yuga is it does have an end date. And we're transitioning from the Kali Yuga into Sat Yuga, the age of enlightenment. It's the age where wisdom prevails, where there's interconnectedness, harmony and health. It's a sovereign state. Their harmony and health is something that they cultivate of their own accord and their own wisdom that guides them to that harmony and health. It's an age of virtue. We very rarely hear that word, virtue. An age of goodness and virtue. And we call it the age of enlightenment. It's a really exciting time, and it's a time that in the ancient days they considered the Sat Yuga to be 100 to 150,000 years away, which is quite concerning. However, what I feel personally they misunderestimated is that the ability to move information across the world, when they were talking about these things and cognizing these things 5, 6, 7,000 years ago, to move information was going to take you a long, long time. If I wanted to convey some information from, let's say, the northern region of India, where the Vedas were kind of preserved, to southern India 5,000 years ago, it would probably take maybe many, many months. If I wanted to move it across the seas, it would take many, many years. They probably didn't forecast our ability to move information in nanoseconds, not just from one country to another country, but from one person to millions of people in nanoseconds. And so my feeling is that Sat Yuga, the age of enlightenment, is on our doorstep. And again, the fact that we have this conversation with people like you today is testimony to that. There's a wonderful contemporization of this language. There's a group of people, Daniel Schmachtenberger, who's in our film, there's a group of people that are congregating and communicating and collaborating to come up with a contemporization of the language of Kali Yuga and Sat Yuga. And they call this Game A and Game B. So Game A in their mind is the world's current civilization. Game A is everything humanity has been doing for the past 10,000 years. Kali Yuga. The existing order is breaking down. We believe Game A has some serious fundamental problems that mean we can't keep playing it forever. And that is a definitive. We cannot continue on the trajectory that we're on forever. The good thing is that Game B is an option. What does it look like? Well, that's something we're working out. This community is trying to figure out what a viable, better civilization could look like and how to reach it. We're calling that alternative Game B, which is the environment that maximizes collective intelligence, collaboration, and an omni-wins civilization that maximizes human flourishing. Would anyone think that we're currently in Game B yet? The system isn't quite set up for an omni-win, that means everyone wins, civilization, that maximizes human flourishing. So we know that it's possible, though. And there's a group of people that are now starting to become like a brains trust to start mapping what this looks like. Because no politician is going to do that for us. They're really trying to make sure that they get voted in the next 4 years. No company is going to do that because they have a bottom line that they need to report to shareholders to make sure that their P&E or their share price increases on an annual basis. Otherwise, they'll lose their shareholders and their bonuses. And that's because they're an orange. So we are going to have to work a lot of this stuff out ourselves, but we also need groups of people to start considering alternatives. Most of us are just trying to pay our electricity bill. But what we need to do is have brilliant minds thinking about brilliant opportunities, brilliant futures for us collectively as a species. And you can actually go to gameb-org, I think it is, on the internet, and you can actually start to join in these real-time conversations with some of these people. It's really wonderful, and we're doing some great work in starting to map out alternatives for humanity. So Game A is a win-lose paradigm. It's a finite game, and it's self-terminating. Our whole society is built on self-terminating win-lose paradigms. Every weekend we go and watch a bunch of people kick a football or hit a cricket ball or a squash ball or a golf ball to try and beat someone else in a finite game that has winners and losers. Schools, banks, politicians, the entire system is built on win-lose paradigms, and we've normalised to that being the fabric of our society. Game B is very different, and it's very hard for us to contemplate what this might look like, which is a win-win paradigm. The point of the game, if it's a win-win game, is that you want to play that game infinitum. You don't want that game to end if everyone's winning that plays the game. The point of the game is to keep playing the game. The more you play the game, the better everyone is. I'll give you an example. My business is a Game B business. So what that looks like is, and it's specifically designed that way. This is the SDG targets that we hit through my company, where the impacts that we're making around the world. And this is on the bottom of every one of my pages on my website. And what you'll see underneath those SDG targets is the money moving from my bank account in Sydney to these different locations. And you can go to my website and hover over each one of those locations. If you go to Colombia, for instance, and hover the mouse over that little dot there, it'll say that we've held 1,010 workshops to help women get rescued and saved and re-educated from sexual exploitation and child trafficking. You can go to Malawi, where we're planting trees for the local community. Go to schools in Kenya, where we've educated countless number of children. Now, what a Game B business looks like is this. Every product created by that business should and will enhance the collective in some way, shape or form. So our retreats, our books, our films, our meditation courses, our keynotes should in some way make the world a better place as a result of the touch point of people having with our business. We're a for-profit, which means we make an exchange for the value we bring to the world. So that means that my family get to eat food, and they actually like food, so that works really well. So we actually are self-sustaining and self-sufficient in our business because we're happy to make an exchange for the value we bring to the world. We have no concerns about that whatsoever. Everyone, I'm sure, in the room pays for their Netflix subscription. You're happy to make an exchange of value. The third thing is, because we're a for-profit business, we take a percentage of every sale of every one of our products, and we channel that through a platform called B1G1, which means buy one, give one. So for every meditation course we run, every keynote we get paid for, every coaching program we do that we collect money from, we take the gross revenue, that's before profit, the gross revenue before we receive any money, goes through B1G1, which is a vetted charity hub, and we choose a number of different charities. 100% of the funds go to those charities, and we pay B1G1 an annual membership fee for their administration costs. So it means the charities are vetted, and also 100% of the funds go to those charities. So what we see there is a win-win-win paradigm, which means the point of the game of me playing in my business should be that the longer I play, the better the world is, correct? And the bigger my business goes, the better the world is, correct? And that's a Game B business. And what we want is we want every company in the world to be a Game B business. Is Philip Morris a Game B business? Philip Morris makes tobacco and cigarettes. Obviously not. So what we want to do is look at how can we make a business that's a Game B business. And this is a natural progression for us as a species, as the consciousness of the people that are creating the businesses start to create businesses that are coming from someone in coral. So the big question is, how do we get to Game B? Oh my goodness, what a question. How are we going to get there? It's a big one, right? And there's really one simple answer. You guys. You guys are the solution. Game B is basically, whether in Kali Yuga or Sat Yuga or Game A or Game B, is literally the individual state of consciousness times 7.8 billion. That's all it is. If we've got one person out of 7.8 billion people in unity consciousness, or teal or coral, there's a high probability we won't be in Sat Yuga. If we've got 7.8 billion people in coral and teal, or unity consciousness, and only one person in, let's just say, red zone, we're probably going to be in Sat Yuga or Game B. So it comes down to individuals. And the good thing is that you guys are already on board. You guys are already aware of this. So I'm kind of preaching to the converted, but the good thing is that you being in teal and coral is naturally going to have a spillover effect on the communities and the lives that you touch, simply by the posts you do, the dinner parties you hang out at, the conversations you have at picking up the kids at soccer. All of those little touch points with humanity are going to have some degree of an impression left on people. This is an interesting phenomenon called a sphere of influence, or an event horizon, where your state of consciousness is going to affect a field around you. And people are like, oh, that's a bit woo-woo. It's like, okay, well, the moon is this ball of dirt millions of miles away. Yet it can influence billions of tons of water in our ocean every single day. So this sphere of influence is an electric, magnetic, energetic field of influence that goes beyond your physical mass. So you don't necessarily have to stand on stage like this to be creating an impact in the world and shifting humanity. The greatest gift you can bring to humanity is the resonance, the vibration, the state of consciousness that you're in. So that's really the starting point, is what are you doing on a daily basis to get into a state of enlightenment? And some people I know, they come to me like, oh, I can't handle the world. It's too much. It's just, it's painful. I just want to run away. I just want to put my head under a pillow. This is not the time to do that. And the thing with a lamppost on a dark street corner, it doesn't care whether it's day or night. In fact, the lamppost is most effective in the darkest of dark nights. That's when it is most usable. That is when it's most effective. And whether it's day or night, the lamppost does not change its luminosity. It does not change its luminosity, whether it's day or night, but its effect is more beneficial in the darkness. So we should relish the world that we're in right now. We shouldn't be running from it. We shouldn't be shying away from it. We should be radiating our luminosity into this dark time, into Kali Yuga. And if you notice lampposts, what they do is they space them just far enough apart so the luminosity of the lamppost gets to a particular distance that is far enough where the next lampposts just overlap a little bit. So we don't need to all be hanging out in nice conventions like this all the time. It's kind of nice when we do hang out. It's all good fun. But go out into your offices. Go out into your law firms. Go out into your schools. Go out into your sports teams. Do your thing. Be in the world. This is not about running off to an ashram or monastery because you can't handle the state of the world. And if you look at the map of the night, planet Earth, we've got little lampposts here and there, and it's still pretty dark. But imagine if there was just 8 billion lampposts, then that simply would shift us from the Kali Yuga to the Sat Yuga. Now, there's this phenomenon called vasanas, and a vasana is in Sanskrit a tendency of the mind. And what happens is we get these coded, conditioned thought tracks in our head. These are neurological patterns of the way we think. And so our brain is wired by our experiences in life, the books we read, the schools we went to, the news we're reading, the way our parents spoke to us. All these things are putting a code into our software of our brain, and this is called vasanas. And if you took an audit of your thoughts in your head and put them into an Excel spreadsheet every day, and you get 40 to 60,000 thoughts a day, and you look at those thoughts and you go, oh my goodness, I can't believe this is what I'm thinking every day. It's really quite limited, quite concerning sometimes, I think, as well. So what we want to do is we want to break free of that code, break free of the way we've been trained to think, break free of the limited perimeter of where our thoughts literally stick within this safe, recurring known. And what we want to do is we want to push our thoughts into uncharted territory and start to really expand our mind. There's a beautiful saying, if you can hold it in your head, you can hold it in your hand. A beautiful example of this is that when I left finance, I wanted to make a dent in the universe. When I found Vedic meditation, which is a meditation that I teach, which is a shameless plug, so if you want to learn, come and speak to me afterwards, it completely changed my life. And I was like, everyone needs to do this. And so I knew I wanted to make a big impact, and to make an impact, I knew I needed to speak in front of large audiences. And I'd never spoken in front of more than 3 people in my life, and I was petrified, very much in the yellow zone, with a little bit of orange, I must admit, of wanting to not be seen. And so what I did was I started to do a lot of visualization. And what I visualized, this was when I was a broker about 12 years ago. And I visualized, some of you might remember, we had the entertainment center down at Darling Harbour, and it used to hold 10,000 people. So what I used to visualize after my meditation, when I was doing Vedic meditation, did you know I'm a teacher? I teach Vedic meditation. If you wanted to learn, come and talk to me later. And so I used to visualize at the end of my meditation, standing, actually walking out through the purple curtains of the entertainment center onto the stage with bright lights in my eyes and one microphone stand, and visualizing me talking in front of 10,000 people. And I used to visualize that in my mind and feel it in my body. A little bit of nerves, but really just getting comfortable and familiar with walking on that massive stage in front of 10,000 people and having them laugh at my jokes, because I could be pretty funny sometimes. Not today, but normally. And I could be, move people with my stories and all sorts of things. And interestingly, years passed and I was getting speaking gigs. My first one after doing that visualization was in Mexico in front of 500 people with A-Fest. But some of you may know, last week, I spoke in front of 5,000 people at the plenary in Melbourne on Thursday, and then 5,000 people at the ICC in Sydney, which used to be actually where the entertainment centre was. So it wasn't quite 10,000 people at the entertainment centre, but 5 and 5 is 10, and over 4 days, that'll do the job, right? So the ICC being where the entertainment centre is. So you can expand your mind beyond uncharted territories. And this is something we've got to start exploring with the landscape of our mind, thoughts that we may not have ever had before about where you're going or what your capability is. We have this now phenomenal understanding about the unified fields and this interwoven interconnectedness that we're all part of. Yes, your physical, mental, and emotional body is this sort of separate entity that you kind of identify with, but particularly when we start using these deeper meditation experiences, we start realizing that we're actually not an individualized, separate, segregated identity. we're actually just like the wave is always the ocean. And even though the wave might be temporary, the ocean is eternal and permanent. And we are that field. And every single thing that we do, think, say, influences that field. And so we want to start being mindful of that. How are we influencing the field every single moment? There's a beautiful Sanskrit phrase I really love called, what we think we become, yad bhavam tat bhavati. I hadn't ever imagined me being a speaker, but I started to shapeshift my identity in my mind, and lo and behold, I became that. Now, when we made the film The Portal, one of the most brilliant minds on the planet, I believe, Daniel Schmachtenberger, who's in the film. And if you haven't seen it, you can get on our website for free, entertheportal.com. And when we were making the film, he spoke to me and the director after the cameras were rolling. He said, you're going to have a big responsibility. You're most likely going to be in front of a lot of people. He said, can I ask you to do one thing? I said, sure, what is it? He said, currently on the planet, there's no one, no body, no governing organization that is given the responsibility of leading humanity to an enlightened planet. He says, so what we need is we need each individual to start contemplating that in their own mind. So why don't you ask your audiences that you're going to be in front of to get them to consider in their mind, what does an enlightened planet look like? What does the education system look like? What does the political system look like? What does the military system look like? What does the sporting system look like? Do we have a sporting system? What does the relationship system look like? What does the banking system look like? When we have enlightened people managing and running these pillars of our society. So I'm going to leave that with you. Daniel's question to you. What does an enlightened planet look like? And just to have that as something that you might want to start contemplating or journaling about, and that may really start to give us a North Star. In Sanskrit, the North Star is called Dhruva. It might give us a Dhruva for us to roadmap towards, and hopefully we'll get through that chrysalis moment and become beautiful butterflies. Before we finish, I'm just going to hand it over to you. If anyone has any questions, we've got mic runners. Otherwise, you can yell out. Has anyone got any questions about what we've covered here today? You could just yell it out, because I'm not sure has a mic. You've got a mic there, great. Sarah. Yeah.
I'm just finding that really is dragging me down,
sure.
And then it's taking my own light away versus.
Sure. So Sarah's question is.
I know that I'm making a difference with the children, but overall, it's a really difficult field to be in. And I know you've heard this before from me.
That's okay. It's a really good question. It's a really beautiful question, because I felt the same when I was a broker. So Sarah's question is, she's a school teacher and she's a yoga teacher. She's a beautiful light soul, and she brings great luminosity into her immediate field. The students love her and love her work, but the collective of her environment is the darkness of the night, and she feels that diminishes her luminosity and plays a part that makes her want to maybe contract a little bit. So how do we navigate being in environments and situations, families, even relationships with your partner, could be your work environment, it could be society as a whole. How do we function and maintain that luminosity and our path and our integrity when that collective is not of the same ilk, not of the same radiance, not of the same resonance? Well, firstly, we've got to understand the spiral. We've got to understand the spiral. And I know when I'm going into an organization, 2 weeks ago I was at Ampol. Before that I was a law firm. Before that, I was a large consulting firm. They're all in orange. And I'm in coral. And I know that they're orange. Sometimes I work with people in red. But I know they're in red. But I know I'm in coral. So firstly, it's understanding who is the recipient of your community and your audience. Who is the receiver of your information? Who is in your community? And having compassion. Having compassion. Don't see them as the enemy. Don't see them as the cause of your suffering. See them as people that have yet to realize their own internal greatness. And that's okay too. We don't begrudge a baby that can't even go to the toilet properly, has to wear a nappy and can't eat and vomits, can't even speak properly. But that's okay, because that's where it is in its spiral. That's where it's at in its evolutionary growth curve. And this is to not come with judgment, criticism, or renunciation. I can't do my practice, I have to go to a monastery. This is no, we need to make the unfamiliar familiar. And the only way to make the unfamiliar familiar is by making the unfamiliar familiar. And that by you living and breathing, being unfamiliar. Because the more unfamiliar you become... Does anyone remember the Harry Met Sally film? The cafe scene? What do the two old ladies say? Just yell it out loud. I'll have what she's having. So Meg Ryan represented a model that was inspiring. And sure, half of that cafe went, what is wrong with that lady? She's a fruitcake. We need to lock her up. There's something wrong with her. She's batshit crazy. But some people in that audience are going to go, you know what? That looks pretty good. I like that. And there's some of you, many of you in this room, that by simply being luminous and radiant and sticking with your practice, you will find, because don't forget, we're in Kali Yuga, but we're moving towards Satya. So there's enough ability for you to know deeply that there will be some people go, there's something about you that I want to know more of. There's something about you that intrigues me. What are you doing? And that, if you don't know and don't have the capacity to show them yourself how to become more luminous, there's a meditation teacher I know who teaches Vedic meditation. He's in B3, and I'll be there in about an hour's time, so come and see me. But yeah, there's lots of things we can do to help people to find that path, but not everyone's going to be interested just yet. And Sarah, you're a beautiful human being, and you need to really own that you're coral, mate. You are coral. And we relish being coral. The general of the army and the captain of the team, they do not nominate themselves. They are nominated because of their qualification, because of their skill, because of their greatness. And if you've been chosen to be coral, then live and breathe it and relish it. Don't run from it. Don't shun from it. Step into it. It's not going to be easy because we're in Kali Yuga, but that's okay. That's where the general thrives the most. Anyone else? Yes, up the back there. Just wait for the mic because my old ears are struggling to hear that.
Hi, I'm just interested to hear about if you could speak a little more about the colours, whether that relates to frequency, or I'm not clear about what your understanding of that is.
It's a good question. The colours in spiral dynamics. So the colours in altitude development are different from spiral dynamics. There's some similarities, some are different. So I don't necessarily feel that there's any connection to the colours, to be honest with you. I'm not familiar with it. There may be someone who's more familiar with that. But there's also the love frequency chart, which is also having colour codes in it as well. So if we look at the love frequency chart, you'll see different colours in that as well. But I'm not sure. And you've got the colours to the chakras as well. There could be something in that for sure.
So when you were talking about coral?
Yeah.
Coral. I don't understand what that means.
Coral is just a colour that they've chosen to represent a particular level of consciousness. So that upper level coral basically is where you're conscious but in a position of authority and leadership. So it could be that you're a president of a country. It could be that you are running a retreat. It could be that you're running a meditation course. It could be that you're a school teacher and you're conscious and still in a position of leadership.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Christina. I
Hi.
have a question about community. Do you have a community that supports and inspires people to keep going at being choral? Because like that lady was talking
Sure.
about, sometimes your light feels diminished and you don't always have people around you to inspire or keep you going. So do you have some kind of community?
It's a great question. Absolutely, we do need community. I've got two communities ultimately. One is the community of my students, my Vedic meditation students. So we meet every Monday. It's free for all my students that have done the course. And that is to give them exactly that sense of collaboration, communication, and communing, coming together. And that's where we have group meditations, we have talks, and allows people from all around the world to come to that experience. But I also have another group called Zen Academy, which is an ongoing mentoring program for conscious leaders in choral. And that gives them weekly mentoring, plus lots of videos on how to build their businesses, but also stay on track with the challenges that come with the world of building a business whilst being a choral leader. So exactly, you've hit on a really good point there, but we can't do this alone. We're in Kali Yuga. In Sat Yuga you could, because everyone's all in the same space. But in the Kali Yuga you do need support, you do need community, you need enticement, encouragement, someone to carry you when things are difficult. So absolutely, yeah, it's a big part of why I built the communities with my students and my coaching clients. You can find about all that at, come and see me at B3, the little booth behind here.
Yep.
Yes.
Hey, Tom. So thanks for your talk today and the meditation. Two things. I think the lady over there asking about the colours, if she saw your chart, it'd probably make more sense, because I came in just as you're doing that, and I think she might have been a bit late.
Gotcha, yeah. Let's just go to here. Maybe, you might not have seen that section. We are there. These are the colours we went through in the altitudes development, if you didn't see that. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Oh, good. And so my question is about how you made that transition to running your game, what's it called?
Game B business, yeah.
Game B business. So you were in a broker role before.
Yeah, I was in orange.
Yeah.
And lots of red.
Okay. And so I might have missed it if it was at the beginning of your talk, but how did you transfer into that Game B?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So the biggest shifts that I got, and one that many of you will most likely have, is cataclysmic events. Usually what catapults us out of one stage of this will usually be some sort of tragedy or crisis. And that's why we made the film The Portal about 6 people that went through crisis, because crisis is one of the evolution or universes, gods, whichever way you want to call it, it's methodologies for enacting evolution, which everything must evolve, grow, and become more conscious. And when we get stuck in these spirals, what happens is the universe sends extreme notification and a huge butt kick. And usually it's something fairly gargantuan and fairly painful. It's in Sanskrit called a rashi. So we have 3 forces of evolution. We have Shiva, the destructive operator, Vishnu, the maintenance operator, and Brahma, the creative operator. What we want to be is continuously in Brahma, the creative operator mode, so we're constantly evolving, adapting, growing, and learning. But we're very calcified and rigid and static species, and we tend to stay in the recurring known a lot, which means we attract a lot of Shiva, which is a lot of turmoil and chaos. But even then, we can be in Shiva with a lot of turbulence and chaos and still not move. And so the universe is like, far out, I got a real stubborn one here. And then it will send a rashi. And a rashi is an absolute game-changing situation that will be such a major crisis that it forces a breakdown or breakthrough moment. And so that's what I had at the age of 29, and it was a very bleak time in my life where I was having suicide ideation. So it was breakdown or breakthrough. It was the caterpillar with the resistant immune system at 22 all. Does it die a caterpillar or does it move to the butterfly? Now, I fortuitously managed to find beautifully and divinely organised by the universe to come across Vedic meditation. And that was a huge transformational experience for me. And from there, I just learnt to want to become a teacher of that tradition, and from there I built a business out of it. So that was an ongoing process. But all of you will be most likely inspired to move forward through some form of discomfort. So whenever you've got discomfort in your life, it's either Shiva or it's most likely going to have to be a Rashi if you keep resisting. That's not a problem. That's actually the best thing you could be going through. What we want to do eventually is get so adaptive and so conscious and so tuned in that we don't need any more Rashis, and we don't even need Shiva. We just oscillate between a bit of Vishnu and a lot of Brahma. And that's how we get very successful, effortless, low maintenance type of existences, what we call flow states. And us as a species, that's what we'll be like in the Sat Yuga window of time as a species. But at the moment, we're so rigid and so calcified and so lacking in adaptive capacity that we generally attract a lot of turmoil, a lot of chaos. So anytime you've got turmoil or chaos in someone's life or in a business or in a relationship or in a race of people or a group of people, we tend to see that there's just a lot of resistance to change. One more question. We're going to wrap it up for the next speakers. Any others? One more down the front here. Do you want to yell it out if you can? Yes. Hey, Bob. Good to see you, man. I didn't see you with the glasses and the hat. Yeah. The network of corals. Bob's asked if there's a network of corals. I believe that there are networks developing, nodes that are developing. We've got Zen Academy, which is my own little network of corals. I don't think there's a global network. They've got a beautiful group of people called Game B happening. I'm working very closely with an organisation which is a very private and exclusive retreat centre in South Bali called Nusa Penida. And I'm now working with that organisation now. And what we're working on is supporting the coral workers, so giving place for coral people to come and regenerate and to congregate and proliferate, but predominantly it's for high-level orange people to come into coral. So we're working with kings and queens, presidents and prime ministers, CEOs and celebrities to get them out of orange and into coral. So it's really exciting what we're doing with that organisation at the moment. But if you, we're very open to this collaboration, congregation type understanding, appreciation. I want to thank you all for your time today. Thank you for sharing space. Thank you for being part of this conversation. I feel it's an important conversation. And I couldn't have this conversation unless you were in the audience. So much gratitude to you. Love and blessings. See you soon.